Now we have someone you know very well, I think. This is Barb from the infamous Treehouse Cafe. Where are you, Barb?
Lollipop. Hi, I'm Barb from the Treehouse, as you know. Our story, hang on, Heidi said I've got to say hello everybody. And thank you for having me here. Having been told I've only got 10 minutes to speak, her fault. I had to give you the condensed version and highlights explaining how I ended up making my home in Boyerbrook. I was born in Yorkshire, a Yorkshire lass, in July of 1952, and spent my first 14 years growing up on the moors with my brother and my sister, and we were a close family, with me being especially close to our dad. In 1968, Dad decided, in his ultimate wisdom, we would emigrate to Australia. For a better life, he said, so £10 ponds we became, and we bound for the Sydney Army Barracks. Arriving at just 14 years old, I found my first job in an aero zip factory, as we all had to work. There's no dole in them days. But Mum and Dad didn't stay for long. So in 1967, seeking better jobs, Dad bought an old ex-taxi. And we all grumbled in it, and we crossed the Nullarbor, 1,500 kilometres of a long stretch of dirt road. My mum cried for 2 days. We kids thought it was brilliant. As you will notice in my story, the Nullarbor and I are familiar friends. Arriving in WA, I found a job in a bakery in Rockingham, married in 1969, and caught the famous bone rattler from Kalgoorlie back across the Nullarbor, back into Sydney, where we had our first child, Kerry Ann. I worked 2 jobs in a food hall as a sandwich hand, and while Kerry was an infant. Surprisingly, don't laugh, getting married at 16 didn't work out. Who would have guessed? My mum told me, but I didn't listen. I need my glasses. So I hightailed it back across the Nullarbor to WA and made Rockingham my base. Things settled for a while until it came time for Kerry's vaccinations. She contracted whooping cough soon after. To this day, I can still remember the sound she made struggling to survive. And it became apparent that my Kerry was disabled. With the unwavering support of Mum and Dad, we shed a lot of tears, but slowly Kerry and I made a life for ourselves. Most of you guys have met our Kerry. She's a pain in the ass. So she's really improved. She's good. That was just to let you know that was a good ending. In 1976, I met John, a German immigrant and my future husband. Life was steady until it wasn't. In 1977, my world was shattered. My dad, the closest person I've ever been in my entire life, died at work from a massive heart attack at 46. He never saw me married to John and settled, or the birth of our girls, or the fabulous life we have built, but he would have been proud. Anne-Marie was born 4 years later, and when she was 6 weeks old, we travelled back across the north to New South Wales in search of work. John was a bricklayer, and I was his labourer, God forbid. 3 years later, we grew homesick, so back across the bloody Nullarbor we went. Luckily, because while giving birth to Heidi in 1984, I had a heart attack. I'm sure if you've met Heidi, you will see why. But I was grateful to be back in WA and to be near my family once again. We stayed in WA for a few years, but ultimately we had to follow the work. So north we travelled, across the top, and ended up in a place called Marundi, New South Wales. We settled, bought an old farmhouse to renovate. I worked nights in a roadhouse while John worked days as a brickie. We even had the first inside loo, and everybody in town was so jealous. Disaster struck at Christmas 1988. While I was working nights, our home burnt to the ground. Rats had chewed the wiring and caused electrical fire. Luckily, John saved the girls by pushing them through a window. When I arrived home via a lift from the local place, it was gone. We'd lost everything. The girls were in pyjamas, John was in his stubbies and with no shirt, and I had my work uniform. The following day, after a sleep at the neighbour's farmhouse and many tears, we were told that the girl's Shetland pony that was in a field, I'm telling you this, it was in a field of 50 cows, got struck by lightning. And it's dead. And I thought, no, I'm not allowed to say that word. Look at this. And I know that nobody is going to shed a tear for a bone-headed Shetland pony. But for me, that was the last straw. So I said, so as you guessed, we went back. As luck would have it, we landed on our feet. Life was good. We hit the building boom in WA and moved to the south coast of Mandurah. The girls grew up leading a charmed life. After many years of John bricklaying and me running a roadhouse, we decided to retire. He said, you work too hard. And I went, yeah, I know. And he said, we'll buy a caravan park. And I went, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. So we bought ourselves a small caravan park in Harvey. Little did we know it turned into a booming business. Spanish jam and cream, tea, you name it, we did it. Which we later sold for a bucket full of money. So our next 5 years we travelled all around the world and Australia, across the Nullarbor, just to make sure the Nullarbor hadn't disappeared. After a time we returned to our house in Harvey, ready to retire. But alas, my old Yorkshire bones still had some work left in them, and I got bored shitless of sitting and reading a book. Heidi ran and said, hey Mum, the treehouse is for sale, you want in? And I went, you bet, yeah. So absolutely, we bought it the next day. And the only thing left was to tell John we needed to move. And so I said to him, John, I bought a cafe. And he went, where? I said, Boyarbrook. And he said, is there a pub there? And I went, okay. So here we are with all you fabulous lot. I've lived an extraordinary life filled with disaster and excitement, but we've made a life for ourselves. A Yorkshire lass made of hard work and a sharp tongue, and a German fellow with a strong back and a hard head. I've always said you never experienced hospitality until you visited Yorkshire. Yorkshire is my heart, but now I consider Boyarbrook my little Yorkshire home. Even today's event, Heart and Soul, is perfect because as a Yorkshire lass, everything I do is with my heart and soul. And if anyone can remember how many times I've cost the Nullarbor a free coffee. As a closing note, I wish to thank my 3 girls for loving me as much as I love them. And a big thank you to my treehouse family and Boyarbrook for putting up with my crazy. Thank you, ladies.